The Bendy franchise. To date, at least at the time of this recording, this is a series of two games with one side game, maybe. Well, side game, I should mention. And one game basically in the works. This is a surprising little thing that came about. I mean, it initially was released in 5 parts. I remember seeing some of the YouTubers like Markiplier playing the first game, and it's amazing. It's a simple, possibly really unexplored concept at the time. Now, of course, the main game, or the main franchise, main timeline, is Bendy and the Ink Machine, and then Bendy and the Dark Revival, with a side game pseudo prequel. No, sort of prequel, I should say, of Boris and the Dark Survival. With the next entry to be Bendy the Cage. Now, I think this would count as a first person survival horror because, for the most part, you're always playing in first person. You never see your character unless you look in some sort of mirror. Although, you don't really see your character from the first game until the second game. But I think the charm of this series is the fact that it has a very cartoonish look to it. I mean, the world is literally a monochrome world. Although it's more shades of yellow than would be shades of white or shades of green. It's designed like the old style cartoons. The cartoons when animation was just starting up, when they only used black and white or black and yellow. I guess it gives that aged paper feel too for the backgrounds or such. And I think this is part of its charm. You're running around a cartoon world, one that is apparently dark, and you have the titular character, Bendy. Bendy is a cartoonish demon. He's more, the initial idea of Bendy is he's more of a mischievous little sprite. And in this cartoon world, you get introduced to characters like Boris the Wolf, the ne'er-do-wells of the cartoons, which I believe is supposed to be the Butcher Gang, which is initially 3 members, and the introduction of a female character named Alice Angel. So, this is the world you are thrown into, and these are cartoons created by Joey Drew and his partner at the time, Henry Stein. Now, the basic story behind it is that Henry and Joey in the real world had a bit of a tiff and separated. And then apparently Henry gets a letter to go back to the old workshop. And this is what becomes the first game. The first game in the franchise, Bendy and the Ink Machine. Now, each level of the game added to some complexity, added puzzles to solve. Your only weapon would be a weapon you could grab at some point. And in this world, when you get this note and you arrive at the studio, you have no idea what you've gotten into. You see, in this world, which looks like the Joey Drew Studios, you are running across various ink creatures. Of course, you don't encounter them until a little bit later into the game. You see, each level is its own little thing. The first level is a scavenger hunt, where you have to find 6 items that will, quote, activate the ink machine. Although I think in earlier iterations of it, it was just a straightforward look around. And you got little jump scares, like a Bendy cutout popping around a corner. And then you get your first glimpse of the ink demon after you start up the ink machine. And so you must escape and advance through. You run across a version of Sammy Lawrence that is a bit demented, who is the lead musician, or the lead music director. You then meet up with the next section where you're running across Alice Angel. Alice does not look like an angel anymore. And I think the 2 Alices are to represent the change of, quote, voice actress for Alice Angel. And Alice Angel is one mean bitch, the demented one. She sends you on a scavenger hunt to find various items. All she needs for her device that will, quote, in essence, make her perfect and beautiful. She's flawed. In fact, she's been hunting down and killing various versions of Boris. Who is helping us at this point. A copy of Boris. Well, and she seems to be helping us to escape, but she then turns on us because she wants the Boris. Of course, after near almost apparently dropping us to our death, well, she basically then kidnaps Boris. And to which we are now basically running to survive. So as we survive and then have to fight our way through a little cartoonish area, which is a workshop that is hooked up to some games to allow access. Of course, we have to solve puzzles, beat nasty things, and eventually find Boris, but it's too late for Boris. And we end up getting, we end up getting killed. Well, no, not killed. We end up fighting a Boris that's demented. But as it turns, well, he ends up, having to fight this Boris, defeat it. Of course, Alice come out raging, and she's then killed by Allison. No, later get called Allison, but and another Boris, which is known as Tom. Obviously, this version of Boris has been harmed and wounded. Doesn't trust Henry, and when the ink demon finds their quote hideout, Henry is forced to fend for himself. For ended up meeting up with them in a village of forgotten ones, and we have to fight, off a horde. Well, also after fighting Sammy Lawrence. This is, of course, when Tom now sees you're not a bad person and offers to help you. Henry then manages to get to the Ink Demon's lair and, successfully defeat the Ink Demon by showing the Ink Demon, Bendy, something he's never, quote, seen before. The end. With this released in chapters, with the last chapter basically coming out with also the full game on Steam, it was amazing. Bendy and the Dark and the Ink Machine was very brilliantly done, and that ending catches people off guard. You see, once you defeat Bendy, the Ink Demon, you end up in Joey Drew's apartment. What? How'd we end up here? And then Joey then directs Henry to go through a door, and we're back in the studio, right at the beginning of the game. It is revealed later what the truth is in the next game. Now, of course, there is also the quote pseudo side game, or which is called Boris and the Dark Survival, and it's going to be changed to Boris Bendy Lone Wolf. It is standalone. Actually, all these games could be standalone, to be honest, because they self-contain themselves. But in Boris and the Lone Survival, Bendy Lone Wolf, you're basically hunting through the abandoned cartoon studio for the supplies Boris needs to keep going. Of course, the Ink Demon's there to haunt you and stalk you. But it helps you learn some secrets and backstory of the franchise. Some stuff that's also revealed in the next game in Bendy and the Dark Revival. Now, your main hub of this game and of that game is apparently the safe house area from Bendy and the Ink Machine. And apparently, finding scraps in this game in Bendy Boris and the Dark Survival allows you to see some things. Basically getting we learn what he was or who he was. Apparently, a gentleman named Buddy Lewick. Boris trying to piece together what he looked like. And of course, this is revealed in other lore related to the game. And there's books and little cartoons and all that to help expand on this lore. But we learn that this is a world all in of itself. And this is mostly revealed in Bendy and the Dark Revival, where we actually start in the real world with Audrey, who is our protagonist in the second game. Who there are some secrets about her that you learn throughout the game. I mean, she's now working for Archgate, which, the owner knew Joey Drew, and when Joey Drew passed away, he managed to purchase all the stuff that Joey Drew had, including the Bendy series. And of course, what some people like to do, we've seen it nowadays, we see it every day anymore. We like to bring back the old stuff. We like to bring back stuff. I mean, let's face it. Even at the time of this recording, we have brought back He-Man, we brought back She-Ra. There's been at least 2 attempts to bring back Thundercats. G.I. Joe is always getting reinvented, it seems. Some games are being remade and rebuilt from the ground up because people, the new generation, is interested in some of these old things. And it's a bit nostalgia for some of us when way we grew up and all that. So, obviously, Archgate wants to revive some things and make new cartoons featuring Bendy. And let's face it, it can work. And Audrey is there, working there. Well, the owner finds it an honor. I mean, she's apparently related to Joey Drew. But there's another person there, working there, an seemingly old man named Wilson, who we learn is actually the son of the owner of Archgate. But he also knows about the ink machine, which was one of the items taken from Joey Drew. We also learn some more about this machine. And somehow it was Joey Drew managed to steal it or something. You know. But Wilson manages to convince Audrey to help him start the machine with a scavenger hunt, just like in the first game. And then we get pulled into the world of the Bendy and the Ink Demon. And it has changed a lot. Wilson can apparently travel between the ink world and the real world. Wilson is like a supreme ruler there, and touting himself as the defeater of the Ink Demon. And the Ink Demon is still there, though. What they managed to do, the best that Wilson could do, is strip the Ink Demon of its powers. Of course, we learn through the game that also. And we learn that the cycle hasn't been restarted. You see, that is the thing with this world. It's just a cycle. And it will get restarted every time Bendy sees the end. So anyone who attempts to, quote, make the demon see the end is obviously someone who should be imprisoned. or that realizes that this world is meant to be a cycle. So why is Audrey here? She was pulled into this by Wilson. So she's trying to escape, but she's in the old cartoon studio. So now Audrey must work her way out of the cartoon studio, solving puzzles and avoiding the ink demon, which talks now. He talks. I mean, I almost shit myself when that happened. But Audrey wants to get out of there. But also understands they need to defeat the ink demon. But your first few chapters are just trying to get out of the cartoon studio. And you eventually find that there is a way out of there, but it takes traveling through a pipe, which is somehow linked to the Gent Corporation. Those are the ones that built the ink machine. It's also your primary weapon in the game will be your Gent pipe, which you have to acquire. Until you can acquire it, of course, you have to avoid dangers, hide. I mean, you can't really fight back if you don't have a weapon. And you're running into more ink creatures, seekers, and oh my god, some creepy ass creatures. Honestly, a variation on the old projectionist character in the first game is now running away around the place. They're like Daleks. Almost like Daleks. But as you're working your way through this new realm, this evolved cycle, and get out of there and even into a city, you're also trying to be aware of the ink demon. In fact, before you almost get a chance to escape, the whole factory area, the whole studio area, which you even come across a tour for the studio. And apparently that Joey Drew set up apparently a rest area for the workers, so they didn't have to worry about a long commute, during the week. But of course, this backfires. I mean, just as you think you're going to get out of there, Wilson drops you down to the bottom of the shaft where there's a bunch of fucking cartoon spider things. Oh my god, that you have to beat. And of course, all this time you're also acquiring abilities. A banish ability, which only works if you manage to sneak up behind an ink being and grab them. An ability to shadow travel or something. Great way to get through tight areas. But as you're working through all this, you're learning more. It's like they become a whole community in there. But of course, you've got a overlord dictator like Wilson, and the threat of the ink demon. Well, you go through this and you find out that Wilson is, you find the community and you have to bust into the prison area with all these projector heads and all that, and you find the cycle breakers. This is also where apparently the end is kept. See, the cycle breakers apparently know, and this is what you also learn from Henry when you finally get to see him, that there is no way to truly defeat the Ink Demon. The only thing you can do is just reset the cycle. Show him the end. That's the only way to do it. And that starts again. So, of course, now Audrey will aims to do that, but of course, when she goes to find the end, this is after meeting someone who helps her get into that area, and you gain another ability to transport to sort of prior points in your adventure. I didn't fully examine it, but maybe I should just replay it and examine it from that point. But as the game progresses, of course, you find out a lot of stuff. You eventually, of course, when you try and find the end, you get sort of knocked out and taken to Wilson's place, a mansion. You're only allowed on one side, but on the other side is Alice Angel, the demented one. Guess Wilson didn't know how to beat her, so he just maybe made a deal with her. And of course, while you do another quote search for something and then get discovered, and then you get, something to help you rest. That's when Alice abducts you, challenges you with a lethal puzzle. And when you solve it, gets completely and utterly upset and pissed off and screaming and yelling. So, what do we do? Well, we escape her, then find out what Wilson wants. And it seems he has an idea. He's going to create a new character. A color character. But it needs a soul. That's why he brought Audrey into this world. Of course, Audrey doesn't want that. She manages to shove him into the machine. We then go down and have a fight with this new amalgamation, which the only way to defeat it is one, sort of have it stun itself or destroy its generators. These little generator things, they're the things that hinder your powers and hinder the Ink Demon's powers and revert them into Bendy. Which, yes, you run into Bendy a few times in this game. When Bendy's around, the Ink Demon's not around. It's not until you try and sneak into the building, jail, whatever you want to call it, that you see the Ink Demon turn into Bendy. I mean, after you get, of course, to Wilson and fight him off, manage to harm him enough, you get damaged. But you've also, on the course of this journey, also learned the truth behind Audrey. She, too, is a creation of the ink machine, just like the cycle is. She is the first good thing, a good life. And even after wounding Wilson and then in an act in the fight losing her legs at that point, the Ink Demon's able to come in, finally destroy it, and then somewhat absorb her. but the memory of Joey Drew does manage to talk her into, you know, asserting control. And, un momento. Okay, I'll be there in a little bit. Anyhow, sorry for the interruption. You end up taking control of the Ink Demon and managing to take it to see the end with the help of all the people you've met, the good beings you've met along the way. And it ends the story there. Well, with Bendy now in the real world, the cute Bendy in the real world with Audrey. And it's a fine ending to this game. I loved it. But of course, in the tail end of the credits, you see that the Gen Corporation has reclaimed the ink machine. There's more to come. One of the best things about these games is that they are very self contained and they explain themselves, making not necessarily playing every game a must because you get enough of the story from each entry. It's a good game franchise. I love it, and I recommend everyone gets it. What's coming? I don't know, but I'd love to see what it is. And that's all I'm going to say about Bendy and the Ink Machine, the Bendy franchise to date. Hope you enjoyed it all, and take care and have fun. Bye.